You're listening to ADHD Support Talk. ADHD Support Talk is brought to you by addclasses.com. Visit www.addclasses.com to sign up for helpful resources and online events today. I am your co-host. I am Lynne Edris, and you are listening to ADHD Support Talk. As I said, I am a productivity coach. I help overwhelmed professionals reduce procrastination, improve their time management, and get more done with less effort so that they have more time and more energy for the things that matter most to them. You can learn more about me and what I do on my website. That's www.coachingadvantages.com. And I have Tara McGillicuddy with me here today, the founder of ADHD Support Talk and my co-host. And in a minute, we're going to talk about shortcuts for the ADHD brain, how to make life a little bit easier. And I think that can be a really helpful topic for a lot of us. So welcome, Tara.
Hi, I'm glad to be back. As Lynne said, I am Tara McGillicuddy. I am an ADHD coach. I'm a woman with ADHD, and I also help people shift their energy to be happier and more productive. You can learn about me and the services that I offer by going to taramcgillicuddy.com.
Awesome. I always love when we record these together because I think we bounce ideas off of each other well, and
Yes.
we have similar but also slightly different approaches to things. So I think a lot of times when we get on these kinds of conversations, we come up with good ideas that are helpful for people. And I really hope our listeners find this helpful too. What we're talking about today is what I call like that soul-sucking repetitive stuff that really can it can be boring, but it can also be really hard to get started on because they are things that you do repeatedly. So I often talk with my clients about how to create shortcuts for things like that. I talk about things like what I call automations or personal automations. So habits, rituals, things like templates and checklists. And, Tara, you were talking about guides, different things that we can do to make it easier for us to do the things that we need to do and to do them more quickly and with less energy and focus expenditure and, with less time expenditure as well. So I'll jump in and start talking about like when I'm talking about personal automations, I'm talking about like creating some sort of way that the things that you do repeatedly are easier. So whether it's a template, whether it's a checklist or something that you do more than once, it can be really helpful. Everything that happens as a matter of habit happens in the part of the brain that like handles reflexes and things of that nature. So that part of the brain really uses less executive function energy. So it can conserve mental energy when you create automations, when you create rhythms, when you create routines, templates, checklists, those kinds of things for doing things that you do repeatedly. So I'm always looking for things that I do daily, weekly, monthly, yearly, whatever. Anytime I've done something before, I have this sort of needling thought that like, I've done this before. Like, why do I have to do this again? Or why do I have to reinvent the wheel again? So I'm always looking for ways to make those kinds of things easier and faster. So I'm a huge proponent of things like templates, right? We were talking before we came on about packing lists. Like anytime I travel, I have a whole bunch of documents in my on my hard drive for different kinds of trips that remind me of the to-dos I need to do to prepare. I got to get a cat sitter, maybe somebody who will change the cat litter. I have to find a cat sitter, stop the mail, all of those little things that we have to think about that are A, hard to recall, B, require sometimes a lot of energy. And they're, for me, definitely things that I'm prone to screwing up.
Yes.
Right. So templates, anything that I do more than once, I try to make something that is reusable.
But I think it can be counterintuitive or seem counterintuitive to a lot of us with the ADHD type brain, because when there's something that's boring or something that's overwhelmed, we want to stimulate our brain, or we need to stimulate our brain, or we think that's what we need to do by being very creative about something. And a lot of times it's the opposite that helps us get it done, whether it's using a template, using a recipe when you cook, or even to have a guide. So because when we're doing something boring or something overwhelming, and we're trying to recreate the wheel, reinvent whatever it is, it can shut our brain down. So having those shortcuts, whether it's a guide, a template, or automating something. And I think for a lot of us, we can resist those things unless we have a coach, talking to us about it, or someone else, or just reminding ourselves, oh, if I get this done by using a shortcut or a checklist, it's going to be easier, and my life's going to be better if I can just use a tool that can help me get started instead of going around in circles, staying in that overwhelm or mental paralysis because for whatever reason, we're not using that shortcut.
Absolutely. So those are the kinds of things that you've done before, but you dread.
Yes.
Those are the kinds of things that really lend themselves well to things like templates and checklists. And so the packing thing, just, we were talking about that the whole travel, a lot of us love to travel, but the preparation that it requires anytime you travel, even for a weekend or an overnight, can really be the kind of thing that we would avoid or delay or postpone because we know it requires us to sit, kind of be still and think. And a lot of it is really boring, right? A lot of details, a lot of I's to dot, T's to cross, that sort of thing. So when you know that it's something that you resist or you avoid, or you're tending to postpone, procrastinate, put off, delay, whatever, or kind of shuts you down, but it's something that you've done before in a similar way, that would be something that might make it a lot easier for you to just get some momentum and get moving if you have something to start with other than that literal or like metaphorical sort of blank page, so to speak, right? Yeah. So anytime I have to start something from scratch, that feels harder for me than it will feel to use something I've done before or something that gives me a little bit of a starting point.
In something that's brand new that you've never done before, that's when it's exciting to be innovative and creative. And maybe the first time, maybe the second time it's fun, but you get to the third time, to the 80th time, it's draining. And if you have that step-by-step approach, that checklist, that whatever it is, I think people, it's different what works best. Some people, a worksheet might work best. Some people, a checklist might work best. But if you have something to work from, use it. It is helpful. I'm someone, because, sometimes I fight, I resist, and it's like, okay, if I just did it that way, if I use something that was already set up, like creating graphics. Oh, there's templates for everything. I don't have to spend 3 hours trying to design something and have it be centered and not centered when somebody already made this for me. Like, it's stuff like that. And here's the thing with me, I know myself and a lot of other people with ADHD, we can give ourselves permission to tweak it around. Like, we don't have to use the exact format. We can play with it. I think that's a thing, because a lot of people, certain templates or guides or automation can be too restrictive. But if we give ourselves permission to say, okay, we're going to use this as a basic format, template, guide, and we can give ourselves permission to play around with it. That's an important thing.
I think it is too. That you brought up, that kind of reminds me of one of the things that I do, and that I've talked to clients about before, and some are like really resistant even at the concept. But and this sounds a little weird, but my holiday decorations used to be something that I really like. I kind of postponed getting them out because it was, where does this go? Where does that go? All of kind of the thinking that is required to put the holiday decorations out, even though I enjoy them when they're out. That concept or that notion that I have to make decisions about where every single thing goes, and that's sort of fun, but I found that it was something that was making me sort of delay and avoid a little bit, and also making it feel like it took longer, but also making it take longer like in actuality. So I started taking a picture every year of my Christmas decorations, and I save them in a folder. So on my phone and on my computer. I also take a picture of where stuff was before I got the holiday decorations out, because I'm the queen of like, what is this and where does it go? I know it's only been a few weeks since I put it away, but like, then I feel like I have to redecorate the entire room. At first, I really, it felt like a great idea, but then it also felt like I was kind of robbing myself or cheating myself of that creative side of the holiday decorations.
Yeah.
So what I decided was, okay, I put things where they were last year. I store them by room now. And, I've got my little picture that shows me, how I decorated the mantle last year, which usually is, how it ended up at the end of the season after several different iterations and lots of tweaking and playing. But instead of feeling like I was getting gypped or getting cheated of that creative outlet, the way I think about it is I'm going to use the photo, I'm going to set it up this way. And then when it's done, I'm going to have more time and I'm going to be able to, in a more relaxed way, and have more fun with moving things around and deciding where I want things to go. So at the end, kind of when everything's all done, it's never exactly the same as it was last year, but having that sort of template to work from makes me feel less pressure getting everything out and getting everything set up initially. And then I feel like I have more time and more space to kind of play and tinker and enjoy the creative side of it. I'm not sure if that makes sense.
Yeah, we can have the best of both worlds. We can have that structure and that format, and we can also add the creativity to it and the innovation.
Absolutely. Yeah. So finding a way to do that works for you, right? I always say, we're not going to give you we're going to give you tips and we're going to give you ideas, but we want you to take them and make them yours.
Yeah.
Right. Use them in whatever ways work for you. Like, don't do exactly what I do, for sure.
And another example could be working with someone like a professional organizer who comes into your home and helps you put stuff in a certain place. More than likely, they're not going to do it the exact way that works for you. I mean, maybe you'll find like an amazing person that comes in, but it's highly unlikely you're going to find someone who's perfectly going to find the place for you to put things. But what you can do is say, oh, this makes sense. I see why she put my cups and dishes here, and that makes sense. But I work a little bit differently. Maybe I'll move them to another shelf, so I'll take what she did and make it work for me. And I think that's one of the things that it's really important when it comes to these shortcuts, is they're shortcuts to help you get things done. They're not doing the entire thing for you. They're making it easier for you to do it.
Exactly. And I think that's true with anything, right? We were talking before we started recording. I use templates for everything. Like every podcast that we do, I have a template that has like I have different versions of my, like the little intro thing, but I also have all the steps of all the things that have to be done to publish the podcast.
Yes.
It's really hard to remember all of the steps, even though you do it several times a month, right? So it's a template, but it's also sort of like a guide / checklist for me as well. And I can make sure I'm not missing any steps. Not that I never, ever mess up or miss the steps, but it makes it a lot easier to remember them, and it takes a lot less energy out of me. And it also makes it less stressful.
And I think a lot of times, just because we're so busy as human beings, then we have the ADHD brain to it, we're not always aware of how many steps are involved to even the simplest thing. Like it's like, in one of the things like I do in my action group is I have people be very precise about what action they're going to take during the action time. And I drive people crazy. But part of it is like, during this 30 minutes, what is the action you are actually going to be taking? What action would we see you doing? And it's amazing. People start to realize, oh, this is more involved than I thought it was.
Yes.
Like organizing, for example, you're not organizing for 30 minutes. Like what you're doing is probably clearing things off, or you're finding homes, or you're donating, or you're designing something. Like
and sorting and filtering.
Yes.
And,
so having that guide or that checklist, the shortcut to, okay, my brain's in I'm probably not thinking about organizing while I'm organizing, to be honest. I'm thinking about other things. So if I have that shortcut to bring me back and bring my brain back and ground me to be in that present moment of, okay, this is what I'm doing right now, can be very helpful and can be a necessity for a lot of us. I got to tell you, I think it's more of, it's not just helpful. It's not just a shortcut. I think it's a necessity.
It's a necessity for me,
depending on what we're working on.
Yeah. Everybody's different, right? Yeah. And I always say, like, your ADHD is as unique as your thumbprint, and how it shows up for you is different than how it shows up for me or anybody else. And so is what's helpful for you. So those things like checklists, things like templates, things like guides, that give you that structure, they give you the steps, they take a little bit of load off of your brain sort of mentally, but they also free you up to do things in other ways if you want to. So you don't have to follow the checklist exactly. And you also don't have to sit down and create that from scratch either. That's one of the things I often encourage my clients to do. Like, if you're somebody who handwrites a list or puts a list on your phone of the stuff you want to take on vacation, or the stuff you want to have for a holiday meal, or the stuff the people you want to invite to a party, or whatever it is, save it. Right? You're doing it anyway. Save it in a form that you can use it again, and then look for ways that you can remind yourself that it's there so you can use it again, rather than making yourself feel like you have to start from scratch. Use it. Yeah. Go ahead, Tara.
Easily accessible, because I think you and I were talking about how sometimes probably me more than you, or I talked about this more. I'll save things and then I didn't remember where I saved it. Sometimes I remember saving it. So when you save something, if it's a computer file, have a folder that's very descriptive of what this is and easy to find. If you're using a physical item like a notebook or something like that, or a picture or something physical, have it in a place where you're going to be able to find it. If it's in a pile, put it on top of the pile, honestly, because I know people have piles. Absolutely. Have it someplace where you can find it and access it easily. And maybe set up a reminder that, hey, it even exists for a while, so you use it.
Absolutely. I need all of those things, because of, like so many of our listeners, like so many of us with ADHD, my memory is not necessarily particularly reliable, right? Sometimes I'm amazed at the crap that I can remember, and sometimes I can't remember why I walked into the room, 5 seconds ago. So I'm always thinking about, we always ask our clients, how are you going to remember? The remembering to remember is a big part of the battle for a lot of us.
Yes.
And that's a really it's a tricky thing for a lot of us, right? But thinking about, one of the questions I'll ask myself is, have I done this thing before, or something similar to it? Then that's going to make me think about, even if I can't remember the specifics, it's going to guide me back to think about, where might I find something to start with?
Yes.
And that something to start with, again, is so much easier than feeling like you have to absolutely start from scratch.
And that might be a sign that when there's something you're avoiding, procrastinating about, that's overwhelming you, maybe that's a sign that now's a good time to think about having a step-by-step approach, a process, and maybe a 3 to 5 step thing to doing it. What's the first step? What's the second step? What's the third step? Or if it's not that, what else can you do? Because I think that's something okay, I am overwhelmed by the number of things on my kitchen table right now. Is there a process I can use that I've used before that somebody else uses? Or even getting it out of your head and just writing it down. Okay, 1, put the dishes away. 2, throw the stuff in the trash. 3, 4, find a home for this and that. I mean, because it gets you grounded, gets out of your head too. And that can be a shortcut.
Absolutely. So if you jot those things down, take a picture of it, save it on your phone, take a picture of it and add it to a note on your phone. That's one of my biggest shortcuts. Is I was, like most of us, I don't even know how many pictures I have on my phone, but it's a lot, right? So thinking to yourself, this actually happened to me last weekend. I picked up this little dish that I was pre-made thing that I was going to cook from the farmer's market. And I know I've made it before. I know I've bought it before. I would have said it was a couple of months ago, but I couldn't find the picture. I took a picture of the, they have the cooking instructions for the thing, like right in the deli case there. So I'm searching through my pictures and I'm going like, better than this, Lynn. So as soon as I found it, you can add it to a note on your phone and you can type into the note what it is that the picture is. It's a lot easier for me to search my phone for a word or two that, might make the thing come up. Because in this case, me searching by location and all those other things you can do in your phones didn't really help me. So I've got notes upon notes upon notes upon notes on my phone of things that I've taken pictures of, with plenty of words and context and text for me to search for. That's one of my favorites, right? So I would never just like take a picture of something and not add it to a note if it's something that I think I'm going to need again.
There's a shortcut right there, using our tools more efficiently and effectively. And instead of just taking the picture, take the extra 30 seconds, whatever it is, to write things out. And honestly, I gotta admit, I don't do that. And I can get overwhelmed because I have tools, and you and I were talking about password manager. How I don't use it effectively because there's something that because there was an account I had that required just more than a username and a password. There's like a third thing. And you said to me, oh, and my thing, I can just put it in the notes. I'm like, oh yeah, my password manager has a notes thing. I just never thought to use it because when I first started using the password manager years ago, I was just putting passwords and usernames in it and going on my way. But I can go in there now and say, okay, here's a description for it, or here's a note, here's an extra thing, kind of like instead of just taking a picture or a screenshot of something, you add it somewhere else and put a note. And I mean, it's almost like a miracle that you said this, and I'm like, oh, I didn't even think of that. This is what can be helpful, going back and forth and talking to other people. Like Lynn and I have similarities, but we do things differently. We have different experiences. So I think this is one of the great things when you talk to somebody is, oh, here's an idea. Maybe I'm not going to use it exactly, but I can use it for something else.
Absolutely. And I could tweak it and do this with it instead, right? I used to send myself emails with pictures all the time and then type in the email, like, what the picture was. I always think like, what am I going to be looking for when I'm trying to find this thing next time? But to me, the notes are easier. My inbox is a lot.
Might take an extra couple minutes, 30 seconds, whatever it actually takes you to do extra steps right then and there. But later on, when you go back, it's going to save a lot of time and energy and
frustration.
Like frustration of, okay, where did I put my keys? I'm going to be late. Where's the picture? What did I? Oh, yeah. Or So
I'm a big proponent of leaving a trail of breadcrumbs for myself because I know I can't trust my memory. And I was, kind of laughing earlier. I still have a note inside one of my kitchen cabinets where I used to store something like a really long time ago, because every once in a while I'll still go look in that cabinet. So I'll put a Post-it note or tape up an index card or something that says this is where that platter is now.
Oh, that makes sense.
It's literally been years, and I opened the cabinet and I'm like, okay, this is not what I expected to see here right now. Even though this is the stuff that's been in this cabinet for probably 2 years, where did the other stuff go? I have to leave myself a trail of breadcrumbs. I'm always asking myself, like, how are you going to remember? Because I know that's one of my most tricky ADHD challenges for sure. But thinking about what are the kinds of things that you do repeatedly, whether it's daily, weekly, monthly, yearly, especially those things that you hesitate to get started on, that might be a little easier if you had something to start from, whether it is just, I've done this before and this is the spreadsheet that I used so I can see how I organized it, or whether I, took a picture of this thing and I'm going to try to recreate it or start there as a place to recreate it. But just thinking about, what can you do that can make your life easier, especially for those repetitive kind of soul-sucking things that you feel like you're doing over and over and over again. It's crazy what a simple checklist or a simple guide of some sort can do to make it easier to get started, and also, make it a little harder to make the kind of mistakes we make when we're doing something that we're not really interested in.
And there's somebody that's probably already created a checklist or a guide or whatever. You can probably find it on Etsy or it's somewhere free. But honestly, like I was amazed
Microsoft
at what
template.
I found on Etsy. I'm like, they make them pretty and stuff too. So that's the thing. I mean, you can do it on your own, but if you're overwhelmed by the thought of doing it on your own, a coach could help you make it, or you could just download it online somewhere, I'm sure.
See if you can find it. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I hope we've given you some ideas, or at least seeds for things that you can turn into your own ideas to make your life easier, and to start to, kind of automate some of the things that are really kind of sucking the life out of you, or you're having a hard time getting started on. Anything else you want to add, Tara, before
No, I think that's just like basically what you were talking about. But yeah, give yourself permission to create those shortcuts and use them once you create it, and give yourself permission to also add some creativity, innovation to those templates, the structure, because it's going to make your life a lot easier, and you're going to be happier if you do that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm all about easy, right? I think a lot of the sort of the more helpful things I've come up with in the course of my life really have been sort of born out of not wanting to have to do some really like soul sucking repetitive thing more than once, right? So that, think about it as a process, or, a guide or whatever can make a big difference. But, don't kill yourself in trying to create the perfect one first.
Yes.
Those are the kinds of things that over time, you tweak, that you make them better. Every time you use them, you add something to them, or you take something out, or you change the way it's formatted, or the way you have it set up, or whatever, until it is something that really feels supportive and helpful for you. Absolutely. So please share your ideas. What do you guys do to automate the things that are repetitive? Join us in the ADHD Support Talk Facebook group to connect, to share your ideas. I would love to get you guys brainstorming on some things that you do already that are really helpful for you in this kind of vein. Absolutely. Well, thanks so much for joining me again, Tara. Thank you all for listening. I hope you found this helpful, and I hope we gave you some ideas. And we will see you next time on ADHD Support Talk. Bye.
Bye.